Alright. Hey guys. So I'm gonna just come right out and say it. Satoru Gojo shouldn't work. As a heroic main character, he breaks some of the most fundamental storytelling rules of his archetype. But you and I know that he does work. He works amazingly, in fact. I would guess that the only reason that you're invested in Jujutsu Kaisen as much as you are is because of Satoru. Okay, maybe like Sukuna as well, because he's just a really awesome character and worthy of his own video, but Satoru Gojo is the main draw of the show. And as a novel and script editor, I'm always fascinated by a character that breaks the mold and stands unique in such a saturated fictional field. And a lot of you are probably interested too, so what I want to do today is quickly break down Satoru for all of you writers out there who want to write similar characters, or for those of you who just plain love the character period. First things first though is going over how Satoru does fit into the traditional archetypes that have already been established. You have to master the fundamentals before you subvert them, after all. A lot of the core aspects of Satoru's character are things I already went over in my mentor video, so check that out if you want more details, but here we can really focus on 3 key aspects. The first is Satoru functions like any other powerful mentor. He is brought in extremely early into the story to be a power scaler for the main character and audience. All that means is Satoru provides us watchers with a reference point for how powerful our main characters and others can be. Speaking from a functional perspective, this is most often done by showing the powerful mentor character defeating a villain that the less powerful main characters could not beat on their own. Some great examples of this are Kakashi and All Might, which act perfectly because both those mentor characters seem to be huge inspirations for Satoru, but you can decide that on your own. All Might was introduced absolutely demolishing the slime villain that Midoriya was helpless against. Kakashi's prowess was established early when he wiped the floor with Zabuza in their first meeting after he revealed his Sharingan. And of course, Satoru's power scaling comes in the very first episode, where he just straight up toys with Sukuna, the most legendary cursed spirit. These styles of introduction accomplish a few things on a narrative level. As said before, the first is power scaling, simple. The next is actually a bit of save the cat. For those of you who are unfamiliar, a very popular technique in writing is to have a character do a good action early on so that we, the audience or readers, can see their positive morality and start to like them. There is a whole book on it, literally, and some fictions take it very literally. For these mentor characters that I have went over, protecting their students is their version of saving the cat. People putting their lives on the line and rescuing those less powerful automatically makes them seem cool and likable. Again, this aspect of Satoru's character is very traditional. He is an elder brother figure and guardian to Yuji, our blossoming main character, and this dynamic has played out in countless other fictions that you probably really like too. The second common aspect that Satoru shares with Kakashi and All Might, and honestly many more, is defining the power balance within the fiction. This means that the character simply existing makes it harder for the antagonist to achieve their goals. While it wasn't talked about much at the beginning of the series, Kakashi was one of the most famous and feared ninjas in the entire world. He was a child prodigy, the second youngest person to ever become an Anbu Black Ops ninja, and one of the few people in the world with a Sharingan. Kakashi was a massive part of the Leaf Village's power, which is why he was entrusted to train the last Uchiha and the son of the fourth Hokage. All Might is even more straightforward. He's literally just called the symbol of peace. Villains don't even want to do crime while he's around. His power is so overwhelming and self-evident that it makes the world a safer place simply by him being. Satoru is also part of this group. A season 2 episode details how Satoru's existence keeps the cursed spirits and sorcerers from running amok. He alone could stop them all, so the villains have to restrain themselves and be very careful. The rest of the Jujutsu sorcerers look to him as a wall between them and destruction. This is a very Superman-esque way of building up a character, but it works in Jujutsu Kaisen for Satoru and has worked in many other stories before it. And speaking of Superman, we can move on to the third and final aspect. Overwhelmingly powerful characters like Superman or the others we've talked about are usually written to have innate weaknesses or limitations in their powers. Getting back to All Might and Kakashi, All Might's quirk was undisputably the best. but he couldn't use it for long periods of time because of his injury. Kakashi with his Sharingan was nearly unbeatable in the OG Naruto, but it took a ton of chakra, which limited how much he could use it and how long he could fight. In writing, this is often referred to as a character's kryptonite. It's the introduction of a narrative mechanic that keeps a character from being all-powerful. Having a character with vulnerabilities means that a writer can create tension and suspense around their success. This kryptonite technique is used for almost every ultra-powerful fictional character. Except Satoru Gojo. He is not part of this third group, and this is where he vastly differentiates himself from the other typical powerful characters. Satoru, as far as the anime has shown, has no innate weaknesses or limitations associated with his power. And every time the villains think they have discovered some way to bypass his skills, he simply displays even more power to stop them. It appears that there is no way to actually fight Satoru Gojo. You either have to run away from him or restrain him. Standing in a contest against his power is simply not an option. And this is where Satoru starts to resemble another character that I went over in a previous video, John Wick. At least in the first movie. Here's what I mean. John Wick was not viewed by his enemies as a man that had weaknesses or false limitations or restraints, nor was he depicted as such in any of his scenes. All of John's weaknesses were wrapped up in his wife and his dog, so when both of them died, he became untethered. John could not be reasoned with, slowed down, or stopped. And it's because of all these characteristics that I classify John Wick as a force of nature character, specifically death incarnate. Now, while John is not supernatural in the first movie, he is unstoppable, and he is compared to supernatural entities.
The Utabia Maya Machina. Baba Yaga.
In my video on John Wick, I break down how much of his allure comes from him being a hero written like a villain. The character is terrifying and deadly and unmerciful, but we still root for him because he is fighting for the helpless or avenging the slain. Where the villains usually inspire fear in the heroes, John Wick inspires fear in the villains. And Satoru Gojo does the same. Satoru Gojo is written like a villain. During the fight in Shibuya, it is the villains who are scrambling and panicking trying to defeat him. It is the villains who are mourning the deaths of their comrades at Satoru's hands. They are petrified of him, as they rightfully should be because he is a force of nature that cannot be stopped. But Satoru being written like a villain isn't what makes him so unique. Other characters have done that too, obviously. What makes Satoru stand out is that his disposition isn't written to be in line with those other characters. See, usually force of nature characters, or at least ultra powerful heroes, have one of two factors that keep them likable. They are either stoic and somber, or they are childlike and merciful. This is an almost universal trait for ultra powerful characters that aren't villains. You have your serious characters like John Wick, Yamamoto from Bleach, or Dr. Manhattan from Watchmen, who conduct themselves in a more dutiful, reserved way. Or you have Aang, Goku, and Hashirama, who temper their immense power with youthful exuberance and playfulness. The reason these two routes are taken is because they provide the easiest path for a writer to maintain a character's likability. And that's because ultra-powerful characters who are either stoic or childlike do not kill for pleasure. They kill often, but not for pleasure. The Stoics feel like they are pushed to do it because of the actions of the selfish villains. They have no qualms with killing, but do it because they've been left with no other viable choices. The childlike characters are the exact same way, just represented conversely. They love expressing their skills in battle, but they will do everything in their power not to kill, opting instead to make friends or forgiveness. This is because across fictions dating back thousands of years, ultra-powerful characters who also enjoy killing are almost universally villains, or at the very least, depicted as immoral. Having a character find pleasure in death is an almost instant way to have an audience dislike them, mistrust them, and want to see them stopped. Kid Buu definitionally had a childlike disposition, but he loved killing, so he was a villain. Cell, on the other hand, was stoic and rules-oriented, but he loved killing, so he was a villain. But paradoxically and super interestingly, this is the space that Satoru Gojo occupies. From everything we've seen, he genuinely loves killing cursed spirits and his enemies. It puts a massive smile on his face. But what this means is that Satoru Gojo isn't written like a villain. Satoru Gojo is a villain. He just happens to be the lesser of two evils, so we agree with him and accept him as the alternative. He's our villain. And the way Satoru Gojo is able to operate inside this space is because he is expertly written to embody both the stoic and childlike archetypes. Satoru, for all intents and purposes, is a god. Within the logic of the show, there is nothing that can stand against him, at least no person. His powers defy time, space, and the typical conventions of thought. And that godlike power is reflected in his personality. He is childlike because he never has to take anything seriously. Nothing can hurt him, and when things do happen to hurt him, he figures out a way to hurt them even more. He treats those standing against him as toys, like a villain would. He sees his opponents as playthings for fun. Because nothing stands on his level, there's nothing more he enjoys than showing off. Like a kid playing a game, he craves the moment he can utterly embarrass and humiliate his opposition just before annihilating them. He actively enjoys killing with his power and doesn't need to be pushed to do it. But in tandem with that childlike enthusiasm for killing, he has the power of a god and commands the serious presence of one. In the middle of both his daily life and combat, he'll go from silly sorcerer to stoic, calculating strategist. He knows exactly what he needs to do to accomplish his goals and has the infinite power to do it. Satoru shouldn't be able to behave like this while still maintaining audience likability, but it works. Like Batman doesn't trust Superman to stay good just because it's the right thing to do, we shouldn't trust Satoru either, but we do. And I think the reason he is so likable, aside from the villains being pure evil, is that we audience members are simply in awe of Satoru's godhood. We don't care. He may be sadistic and murderous and all-powerful, but he has pretty eyes and cool hair and he fights people we don't like, so we claim him. Satoru is just human enough, just kind enough for we watchers to not completely see him as alien, but also definitely malicious enough for me not to feel comfortable calling him a hero. It honestly reminds me of worshippers going on their knees before an Old Testament god, knowing that he will destroy his enemies and that he's all-powerful, but we like it because he's our god. Satoru Gojo wants to protect human lives and save the world, but only if he gets to do a lot of murder on the way. Satoru is one of the most interesting and dynamic characters I've seen in anime, and I've seen a lot of anime. And while there definitely still is more to come from him, hopefully now we all understand him just a little bit better. Because he's really freaking cool. Anyway, thanks for watching all the way until the end. If you like what you heard, leave a like, comment, and subscribe. If you want to check out my books or have me as your editor, check out my website for editing services and my rates. I also made a TikTok, so go there if you want to help out. Also, I have a Patreon. Sign up for that if you want. Anyway, as always, it was a pleasure, and I'll talk to you all again soon.